October 1942. 10 months after Pearl Harbor, America's carrier fleet in the Pacific consists of just one ship. Alone, she guards a vast ocean. She was there at the start. She'll be there at the finish. The Japanese will never get her. After victory, age will. She will go to the scrap heap, but her name will live on. Her name is Enterprise.
And this is the new Enterprise. This is Walter Cronkite reporting from Newport News, Virginia. The great ship you see moored behind me is the nuclear aircraft carrier Enterprise, the largest ship in the world. She is 1,101 feet long, 252 feet abeam, 23 stories high, and her flight deck is the length of 4 football fields. She is the inheritor of a great name, the Big E, the Fighting E.
December 7th, 1941. The Enterprise returns to Pearl Harbor after a secret mission, ferrying fighter planes to beef up the Marine squadron on Wake Island. We are still at peace. 10 days earlier, starting for Wake, the Admiral whose flag she flies had issued Battle Order Number 1, which said, the Enterprise is now operating under war conditions. His name is Halsey. A junior officer objected, Admiral, you can't start a private war. Now, 200 miles west of Pearl, Halsey launches a scout plane with a special message for Admiral Kimmel. He entrusts it to his operations officer, Lieutenant Commander Bromfield Nichol.
As we approached the western coast of Oahu, both the pilot and I noted well up ahead in the direction of Fort Allen, quite a bit of smoke rising from several locations. We spoke to each other over the plane's intercommunication system about this, made note of it, thought no more about it until we crossed the shoreline at Barber's Point, where in the same direction could be seen much heavier smoke, also anti-aircraft bursts. Also we could see over towards the southern shore what appeared to be shells splashing in the water. As we approached the air station on Fort Allen, I notified Brig Young, the pilot, that there was what appeared to be an Army fighter plane some distance above us and astern, in a very excellent position to make a run on us. Brig said he would watch out for it. As I was looking at it, the plane nosed over and did dive on us. I saw his guns shoot. Certain fragments came out of our wings, and as he flashed by, to the side and below us, I saw the Jap insignia, the big orange ball on the side of the plane. We knew then what the situation was.
Before we're through, Halsey promises, the Japanese language will be spoken only in hell. December 9th, the Big E sails to war. Samoa to cover troop landings. Then she races north to the Marshalls. Now begin 4 years when the Enterprise will strike so fast in so many places that the Japanese will report her as 3 different carriers. 6 times they will claim to have sunk her. The first time at Pearl Harbor. These premature obituaries inspire her sailors to nickname her the Galloping Ghost of the Oahu Coast. February 1st, 1942, 9 weeks after Pearl Harbor. Halsey launches his planes 21 times, starting before dawn, and attacks for 9 straight hours. The Enterprise hits Watcha, Maloelap, Kwajalein, and pounds and pounds and pounds in her first offensive of the war. In April 42, she's at Shangri-La. Doolittle raids Tokyo from the Hornet with Enterprise standing by. back to Pearl, and then midway, June 4th, into a trap that is baited by Japanese Admiral Yamamoto. The trap is never sprung because Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance counters with a brilliant tactic. He times his attack to hit the Japanese carriers just as their planes are on the deck refueling and helpless. But first he had to find the enemy. Lieutenant Commander C. Wade McCluskey, Jr. did the trick.
I expected to contact the Japanese striking force about 11:20. At reaching that point, about 19,000 feet altitude, there was no sight of the Japanese fleet. Quickly, I had to determine what decision I would make, whether to reverse course, circle, remain in the area, and await further information. I decided that the best course would be to proceed westward for another 20 minutes. After about 15 minutes, below me I sighted what appeared to be, I think, a Japanese cruiser. Later was determined to be a high-speed destroyer proceeding on a northeast course. I turned then and followed the course of this destroyer. About 10 minutes later, having binoculars, I was able to sight the Japanese fleet. Our attack was made about 12:20. And fortunately, we met no opposition in the air. There were no zeros in the air at all, so we had all full reign of making our diving without any trouble at all, without any opposition. Consequently, our bombing was pretty accurately done. And with the hits that we obtained, we put 2 of the ships out of commission.
When McCluskey returns to the Enterprise, he has just 2 gallons of gas in his tanks. Enterprise, Hornet, Yorktown sink 4 Japanese carriers. We lose the Yorktown. But at midway, Japan's superiority in the air is ended. Enterprise goes to Fiji. She covers the Marines on Guadalcanal, then speeds to the Santa Cruz Islands to keep the Japanese from reinforcing the Solomons. It has been a bitter summer. Saratoga is out of action. Wasp is sunk. Only Hornet and Enterprise remain afloat and fighting. Admiral Thomas Kincaid now commands the carriers. Off Santa Cruz, Enterprise and Hornet meet 4 Japanese carriers. Three times bombs smash into the Enterprise. She keeps on fighting, but Hornet is not so lucky. Bombs, torpedoes, and suicide bombers. She is finished. Now Enterprise is wounded and alone, our only carrier on this wide and deadly ocean. She'll remain alone until Saratoga returns in December, 1 year after Pearl Harbor. The next year, 1943, is comparatively quiet for the Enterprise. New carriers relieve her, carriers built in the time her lonely vigil had bought. She goes home for refitting. In her many crossings of the equator, boys who had never lifted a hand in anger or left their inland valleys and city blocks become brine-soaked and hardened sons of old Neptune and of war. In November, she's back. Tarawa in the Gilberts, followed by Truk, the ocean fortress, followed by Ulithi, among others, Hollandia, and Guam, deep in the Marianas, the heart of the entire Japanese ocean stronghold. When they are won, the Marianas will provide long runways for the new B-29 Super Fortress bombers, which will strike with deadly regularity at Tokyo. To increase her cruising range, the Big E refuels at sea. Her planes cover her, but these are tense moments. June of 1944 finds her still in the Marianas supporting the Marines' assault on Saipan. The Japanese, desperate to deny us the runways to Tokyo, bring up 9 carriers. Admiral Mark Mitcher now has 15 carriers, light and heavy, including Enterprise. This time we are ready. History will call these 2 days the Battle of the Philippine Sea. But to the men of the Enterprise, it will always be the great Marianas turkey shoot. The Japanese lose more than 300 planes. The enemy fleet air arm is virtually destroyed. Most of our planes return safely, but not all. There's always a price for victory. In August, Big E strikes the Bonins. In October, she is in the Battle of Leyte Gulf. And then Okinawa. By this time, the Japanese Navy is finished. The door to Japan hangs ajar. One more base, however, must still be had. That base is Okinawa. The Enterprise fights under a rain of deadly kamikazes, the Japanese suicide bombers. The Enterprise is hit for the last time. Her war is over. Of 22 major sea battles, she has been in 20. 15 times in all she has been hit, but here is what it cost the enemy. More than 900 planes and 71 enemy ships destroyed. 192 ships damaged. After the war, she returns to New York. Here she had been christened with a quotation from Shakespeare. May she also say with just pride, I have done the state some service. Who could deny her claim? She is the most decorated ship in U.S. naval history. She'll remain afloat until 1958, then go to the scrap heap. Her proud name lives on as a new enterprise puts to sea after commissioning ceremonies in Newport News in November 1961. A new Big E indeed, the world's largest warship, first atomic carrier. She's nearly 4 times as big as her predecessor. Her soundproof bridge commands 8 nuclear reactors, the world's largest atomic power plant, afloat or ashore. She can launch and land her planes simultaneously. Her speed is more than 40 miles an hour. Her cost, almost $500 million. To describe anything about her requires the superlative. Her skipper, Captain Vincent Depoix, served with Fighter Squadron 6 aboard the old Big E.
Captain, you were a fighter pilot aboard the old Enterprise. Are there any similarities between that gallant old ship and this fancy new one?
Yes, there are many similarities, Mr. Cronkite, although I think it might take an aviator to recognize them. The flight deck, of course, is still there, although her flight deck was a good deal smaller than this one. The basic methods of launching and recovering aircraft are very much the same. The catapults are used now to a much greater extent than they were in those days. As a matter of fact, they removed the catapults on the Enterprise before she had finished her service. Whereas a propeller-driven airplane can take off from a deck with a deck run, and our propeller-driven airplanes still do, or can on this ship, the jets must be launched by catapult. And the catapults that launch our jets these days are, of course, much longer and a good deal stronger, put out a good deal more power than the catapults did on the earlier carriers.
There's unbelievable power in the planes that the new Enterprise can fling and toss into the sky these days. She carries in her insides and on her deck the deadliest air armada ever to go to sea. 100 aircraft, most of them supersonic bombers and fighters, all capable of being armed with nuclear weapons. This is equivalent to at least 400 planes fighting from the decks of the old Enterprise. She can launch one plane each 15 seconds and retrieve them almost as fast.
I noticed aboard here there are no anti-aircraft guns as such. Are your fighter planes your only protection?
Yes, they are. Our fighter planes, plus the guns and missiles of any escorting ships that we would have. And undoubtedly, we will have escorting ships. We hope to have the Long Beach, the nuclear cruiser, and the Bainbridge, the nuclear frigate, as our escort ships when they are available. They both have missiles and anti-submarine capability and would serve that function for this ship. However, I'd like to be quick to point out here that we have the capability, we think, with our radars, with our fine combat information center, and with our interceptors, such as the Phantom F-4H, I expect would get all of an incoming enemy raid on this ship.
The Combat Information Center, a sophisticated complex of radar, sonar, and electronic computers, tracks targets and evaluates data at microsecond speeds. It also recommends tactical countermoves for each ship in the task force, but man still makes the decisions.
The recommendation to take bogey 707 missiles looks good. Have Station Alpha take track 707 under attack with missiles.
The Enterprise's nuclear reactors are heavily shielded. Her crew is exposed to less radiation than is found in a normal city street.
Background reading .01 to .02.
The Atomic Energy Commission sets the tolerance levels for the engineers who work in the nuclear engine rooms. A continuous guard is maintained to see that the limits are never even approached.
Same background, 0.01 to 0.02. Air escape vent. On the air exhaust vent reading, background, 0.01 to 0.02. That's it.
Those nuclear engines pay off in quick acceleration, speeding the launching and recovery of her aircraft. In cruising range, she can go years without refueling. Below deck, she has the world's largest floating airplane hangar. This is the new Enterprise, but Captain Depoix will never forget those old days and life aboard the old Fighting E.
We were always at general quarters for sunrise, suiting up, preparing to go out on a hop. When I say suiting up in those days was nothing like it is now, however. You've undoubtedly seen the high-altitude pressure suits which the pilots fly now for their high-altitude combat missions. In those days, of course, we flew in loafers, a pair of khaki trousers, a flight jacket, or possibly just our khaki shirts, and in a standard cloth helmet with earphones in it. These days, of course, it takes you half an hour or close to it to get into all the advanced paraphernalia which is actually needed by a pilot to fly at the altitudes and at the speeds that we fly at these days. We'd go to the ready room, we'd have a briefing for our mission, be it a combat air patrol or an actual combat mission, and then we'd take off generally in larger flights than we do now. Then you can do about as much damage with one plane now as you could with four then. We flew more by the seat of our pants in those days and in some cases scorned the use of instruments. You just can't fly without instruments now because you're going too high and frequently you're going too fast not to use the instruments to aid you in where you're going. Every man on this ship is aware of the tremendous reputation and service to the country done by its predecessor CV-6. And I'm particularly glad because I think we owe it to the people who think so affectionately of the old Enterprise, which probably had a spirit not transcended by any other ship of which I ever heard.
At her commissioning, the new Enterprise was called a mighty shield to guard and protect the free world. For that mission, she is equipped and fitted with every instrument the mind of man can devise. That and a tradition which evokes such names as Halsey, Spruance, Kincaid, Mitcher, and memories of the many other men who served aboard her predecessors. Over a century and a half ago, John Paul Jones made a plea to the Continental Congress. "Give me a fast ship," he said, "for I intend to go in harm's way." This is such a ship. Her name is Enterprise, the new Fighting E.